Right. All right, and we're live. Hi, everybody. Good day to everyone around the world tuning in to another edition of our AMA Ask Me Anything Heat sessions here at Equilibrium. For those who may be tuning in for the very first time, Equilibrium is a stablecoin and decentralized finance framework where you can come and build and also have the chance to get introduced to stablecoins for the first time. We host these AMA sessions every 2 weeks, and we bring together the guests and from our partners to those within the community to educate you, our community, and the rest of the industry on what's happening in the latest in DeFi, decentralized finance, decentralized applications, and the bigger, broader industry of blockchain. And for those who may be also joining for the first time on an AMA, let me explain how this works. So an AMA is an Ask Me Anything session where we have a guest who is open and available to any question you may have. And you can ask those in real time. So we are live here. You can drop those in our Telegram chat, where our team, shout out to Mike and the rest of the team, will be flagging those and sending them over to me to ask our guest here as they come in. If they're relevant to the conversation, I'll try to bring them up. If not, we'll hold them to the end and do our best to get to them. And here at Equilibrium, because we're so appreciative of all that you do as the community, helping us grow and tuning into these types of events, we also offer a reward, a little prize for the best question asked at the very end, which is chosen by our speaker afterwards. And so for the next 60 minutes, you'll have one of the greatest and brilliant minds in this industry that you can ask anything you want. And again, we'll get to those as we go. And without further ado, I do want to introduce our latest guest, Emin, from the co-founder and CEO of AVA Labs. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Great to be here.
Thank you. We're excited to have you. This has been a very honorable treat, I would say, from my side and the team side, to have someone that's been in this space for so long, has such a storied history. But I don't want to tell it. I would love for you to tell it. So if you can, let's jump right in and tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into this world of blockchain, and we'll go from there.
Sure. My involvement in blockchains and cryptocurrencies goes back to 2001. Wow. So that's a time way before Satoshi. I was doing it far before him. And back then we were dealing with the initial stages of peer-to-peer system deployment. I remember we were trying to get out all these file sharing applications. And we were faced with a really big problem, which is everybody wants to download, nobody wants to upload, nobody wants to give you resources, everybody wants to consume resources. This is the typical tragedy of the commons situation. And Bram Cohen at the time was working on BitTorrent, and his idea was barter. If you want a block that I have and I want a block that you have, then he brings those people together. My idea was, well, okay, that's fine and good, but what if I came up with a magic internet money that was minted on demand through some difficult process, and that was proof of work. So to enter the network, you have to do a real hard calculation. And but then again, you get some finite number of tokens. And if you simply consume, then you're going to run out of tokens and you'll find yourself having to also contribute resources. This was a system called Karma. It is, as far as I know, the very first implementation of proof of work in a setting where it's minting coins. Nobody else was doing that. And so it's very well cited among academics. But remember 2002, I think this, quite a few of your audience might not remember it. They might be too young. But everybody was concerned about terrorist financing. We were living in the days after 9/11. We were all very concerned about secret cells in the US. How are they getting money? Where's the next attack going to be? And so on. So older, wiser professors came to me and said, look, you're a young assistant professor. This is a promising field, but you will never find money. There will never be funding for this. you should work on something that will have much clearer path to success and adoption. And I think they were right. And the idea was too early. And we had to wait until 2008, until a global collapse of the financial system. And for the idea to come to fruition in Satoshi's hands. And to his credit, he took the core idea and he advanced it one more click. His consensus protocol is different from the one I used. I used the classical consensus protocol. He merged in the consensus process with the minting process, which was a brilliant insight. So Bitcoin came in. And so then, I kind of ignored it for a little bit. I was like, okay, cool, whatnot. Then we were like, okay, well, there's some traction around this thing. Let's take a look to see if any of the claims around it are correct. So at the time, all of the core developers were parroting what Satoshi said, which is Bitcoin is protected. Bitcoin is secure as long as a majority of the participants are behaving well. Okay. And so that's a fine idea. And, they kept repeating it. This is what we call a folk theorem. This is something that folks repeat to themselves, but it has never been proven. There is no proof of it in the white paper of the Bitcoin white paper from Satoshi. So we looked at it carefully, and we quickly discovered that it was wrong. It's just false, that Bitcoin is not protected if only a majority are good. You need a supermajority. You need 2/3 to be good. And so this was, and in fact, if you don't follow what Satoshi said, but you follow an alternative strategy for mining that we laid out called selfish mining, then you can make more money than you're due. And
hence the name.
Hence the name, selfish mining. It's you're screwing over the system and making more money at the expense of other participants to the system. It's a terrible thing. And it's a demonstration of the fact that the Bitcoin protocol was not incentive compatible. Mm-hmm. So, and that means a specific thing in game theory, but it essentially comes down to the rules of the game are not really stable. If you follow a different game, you're better off. And that's not a good thing for a game. You want everybody to have incentives to remain in the game, not to switch to playing other games. So anyhow, so we made this public, and there was a huge backlash from the crowd that was vested up to here in Bitcoin. How dare we question Satoshi? How dare we say that he made a mistake, even if he did? And then death threats and whatnot, all sorts of invective.
Wait, you got death threats?
Oh, of course, wow. That's like a career step, right? Felony conviction and death threats are the career ladder for crypto. I don't have a felony conviction, but I do have
10 years. Same thing. I get it. Okay.
Like tenure, I think 2 years in the exactly. So wow. So I don't have the felony conviction, of course, but no, we came under heavy fire. The community then funded their own work to prove us wrong, which was really odd. So they were building the simulator, and we had a simulator for our work, but they wouldn't believe ours, so they had to build theirs. Anyway, so a bunch of people built a bunch of simulators. Every single person who built a simulator came out and said, oh, yep, they are right. So selfish mining is a thing, makes more money. So that was really hilarious, just watching that thing unfold. So after a while, I think they saw the one true path of science. And, they started getting invited to all the conferences in crypto. And I'll cut this short. I've been around for a long time now that I think about it. I was involved in the DAO. I foresaw the DAO hack. I wrote a paper with 2 co-authors called A Call for a Moratorium on the DAO. As far as titles go, it's pretty prescient. We got to know it. Like, don't you put your money into this thing. It might actually go haywire. And it went haywire. The hacker came in and we outlined 9 different hacks. He used one of the hacks we outlined. And there was an additional hack that I wasn't sure about. I thought it was there. My student said it wasn't there. It turned out it was there. He used that other hack as well. So anyway, so he used 2 of these hacks, emptied out $53 million from the DAO, and then Ethereum had to do all the crazy things it had to do. Anyway, so I've done all that stuff. I've worked on constructive things as well. I'm not, in fact, I'm mostly a constructive person. Most of the work I do is not finding bugs or errors. It's mostly building new things. So I worked on vaults, which just got added to Bitcoin recently. Vaults secure your money at rest. Even if you are hacked, even if a hacker takes away all your keys, you can still keep your funds safe. I worked on Bitcoin Next Generation, Bitcoin NG. It powers Eternity. It powers maybe 4 other coins today. It's a new consensus protocol. It's very much like mining, but it's very much like Bitcoin done more in a more modern fashion, much faster version of Bitcoin. And it does away with the block size debate, which again doesn't make you popular because you're like the guy bringing rationality to a crazy religious fight. Like that's the time when both camps band together and attack you together, because like neither camp wants that. They're religious.
Right.
And so anyway, so nowadays I work on AVA. I'm working on a new system based on a brand new consensus protocol. It's a breakthrough called Avalanche. It is literally the biggest thing to happen to consensus protocols in 45 years. There are only 3 things that happened. We had old school, what we call classical consensus protocols.
Okay.
We had Satoshi come by and say, look, all this classical crap, it's very fragile. It doesn't scale. And he was right. It doesn't. And you still today have a gazillion projects that are trying to take those classical protocols and recycle them. I'm not going to name names today, but there have been a bunch of recent entrants into the space and, whatever, hash this and that, whatnot. And at the end of the day, they're doing something that we academics had tread upon, for decades. It's very well established, very well known. And the problems with it are very well known as well. Satoshi knew them, and he said, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to come up with mining, which is brilliant. Except today, mining is far from its goals. It doesn't achieve an equitable distribution of coins. It has given rise to a special class of people, the miners, whose interests are at odds with the users, who consume enormous amounts of energy, who leak a huge amount of value to the power company. And overall, they're a drag on the economy and they're a drag on the planet. So I would like to eliminate them. And there was a new paper that came out about a year and a half ago from a team that calls itself Team Rocket, Satoshi's arch nemesis. And Team Rocket came up with a new protocol called Avalanche, and it's just, head and shoulders better than everything else out there in terms of efficiency. It achieves very quick finality, very, very high throughput, and it can accommodate millions of block producers. You and I and everybody could play a meaningful role in Avalanche. There is no other protocol like it. You can't be a miner today unless you have a cable this thick coming into your house, and I know you don't.
No.
Yeah. So it's just not. We're not effective miners, and you can't really be an effective player in a classical protocol. EOS is a great protocol. Everybody is emulating EOS, by the way. So ETH 2.0 is an EOS clone. It's EOS times 256. That's what it is. And whatever problems EOS has, they're going to have multiplied by 256. So Tezos is also very similar to EOS. There are a bunch of these protocols that are pretty nice, but because they're classical, for the reasons Satoshi cited, they do not permit large numbers of participants. There are only 21 block producers in EOS. If you use any other classical protocol, Facebook is using a protocol designed by one of my PhD students. It admits, Zuckerberg wants to have 28 block producers. That's the limit of that technology. That's as good as that technology gets. Maybe it can go up to 100 if you really push it. But it's not going to go out to 1,000. Not going to happen. But Avalanche can start out at 1,000, scale up to tens of millions. So I'm really excited about what we're doing. And there's a bunch of other things we're doing differently as well.
So question on Avalanche, because you're bringing up a good point. Why build for constraint instead of build for expansion? So why have some of these, some of these other companies, so Facebook, for instance, even just thinking about 28 to 100, why build that and why not go down this path where Avalanche is, as looking at a higher threshold to build to, we'll just say an infinite number rather than limit yourself? What's the value there? What's the trade-off?
So, when people have options, and they pick something that doesn't scientifically make sense, there is typically one explanation for it. That's because that's what drives them to, because of business reasons. So what they're revealing to you is what's really going on behind the scenes. And they're revealing to you their most intimate thinking. So when I see Zuckerberg not going after Avalanche, but adopting my students' hot stuff, which is the thing that powers Libra,
right,
and enrolling 28 of his good friends, immediately and super loudly to every technical person on earth, he is communicating the fact that he wants to build a small cartel. That's what he wants. He wants your data, and he wants to share it with the small cartel. And membership into the cartel is going to cost millions of dollars, and you and I are fodder. So everything you saw in his early days, the derisive way he was talking about Harvard students, how, I don't understand why they're giving me their data, their pictures, and I've got everything, I can sell this, ha, ha, ha. That's going on now loudly and just as out in the open, if you know where to look, in the financial space. So I think what we're seeing with Congress pulling him in and asking hard questions, we're seeing right then and there the reasons why Congress is right to be actually concerned, because there's a small cartel being formed. And if he cared about building an open system, this is not how he would be building it.
So with that being said, let's jump into that broad category of DeFi for a second, and then I want to come back to AVA. So with the recent global events, I would argue that DeFi and specifically the future of finance has been dramatically accelerated into where technology and innovation is going to go. So if someone like Facebook is being questioned and there's data leaks throughout finance, is this going to be a problem? I mean, where does this go? Where do you see the future of finance or decentralized finance going here in the next year? Do you see more people being called in? So, the Zuckerbergs of the world. Do you see more regulation? Do you see more pushback? What is your thoughts on where we go from here?
Okay, fantastic question. Let me try to organize my thoughts a little bit and start at the bottom and kind of scale up the stack, if you will.
Please,
so here's what we're seeing, I think. We're seeing everybody go after the same model initially laid out by Satoshi. People lack imagination. They have no vision, and often they have no technology. So what they do is they go back to well-established technological ideas. They trot them out, and then they go after business models or things they see currently working. They adopt those narratives, and they're mostly unable to even increment them the smallest amount. What does that say to us? Well, everybody is going after the fiat use case. Everybody wants to be the dollar. Everybody wants to compete with USD. Everybody wants to compete with the euro, and that's where it starts and where it ends for them. Approximately everybody. That's what Facebook is trying to do with Libra. That's what a lot of other people are trying to do with their coin offerings. There are 2,000 coins, and the vast majority of them are trying to be a method of payment. That's fantastic, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a method of payment, and I'm the farthest thing from a Bitcoin maximalist, but Bitcoin did it first. It's got a huge advantage, and trying to compete with that is a stupid thing to do. And all you're telling the world is, I'm unable to think for myself, and I kind of want to be a copycat of Satoshi. I just want to do it technically slightly differently, only so that I can push my own coin.
Right.
That's what I'm seeing. And so it's sad. This is like, I just look at this, it's like, oh, you came up with what? Silver to Bitcoin's gold by changing a parameter? How is that good? You came up with Libra? Like, what is this thing? Like, with 28 of your closest friends? You say, is this a joke? Or what is this? Like, how is this fulfilling anybody's required, actual desires in DeFi? So the vast majority of people are doing a money grab or a data grab using Telegram. What the heck are they doing? Raise an enormous sum of money. I mean, I think it's in the continuum of, we've seen so many scams and we've seen some legitimate projects. It's very much in the gray zone for me. Raise 1.7 B, don't deliver anything for years, and then whatever. It's like it's really a bad situation to be in. So So I see like 80 to 90% of the work out there to me has absolutely no interest. It's Jimbo with a new coin and makes a bunch of noise. I don't know. I'm not going to name. I'll name names in 2 seconds. I'm slightly agitated today because the weather isn't the world's best. So you've got Justin.
I'm with you. You know what? It's the same for all of us. So we're on that same page.
Yeah,
no stress.
We've been cooped up because of this virus for a little too long.
Yeah.
So let me speak my mind. You've got people like Justin Sun walking around acting like they've got something. There is no technology there. Zero. We know the technology there is from 1999, and he's telling you that he's got something or another. No, you recycled something that belongs to someone else, and that's all you've got, and it's not very good. So that's what's going on at the very, very bottom of this whole big triangle or big pyramid that we want to build. So there's a lot of projects like this. I would encourage your listeners to not be taken in by this stuff. I keep getting a gazillion questions a day. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? My starting point is it's a scam. And again, I hate the Bitcoin maximalist approach. So I'm a science-driven person. If there is a good thing out there, I'm the first one to call it out. But they're right in labeling 95% of the things out there as scams. It's just a money grab with somebody's initial coin, with initial coin offering, and their hokey little coin that they're pushing with a system that doesn't advance the world. Okay, so that's the core of it. So what exactly could be going on? Where could we go that is really exciting? There is a lot of assets out there, ton of assets that are other than competing with the dollar.
That is true.
Yeah, if anybody has ever, and the funny thing is, people in this space are know-nothings. They've never seen a balance sheet. Open up any balance sheet for, pick Bank of America, take a look at their balance sheet. It's all public. It's all publicly filed. About a third of their balance sheet are a bunch of debt instruments. So how do I trade a debt instrument today? I can't even express it. It doesn't exist. There is no platform on which it could be traded. So that's the kind of thing that AVA is going after. We are not trying to compete with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is doing whatever it's doing. It'll always do what it's doing. I don't think it's going to, it'll go up, it'll go down, but it's not going to moon permanently. That's not going to happen. It's just going to be its own thing. And that pie, it seems really big to a guy who grew up, writing code, the people from the hacker, the coder background who got into Bitcoin. That's a tiny piece of the overall pie. The vast majority of wealth is captured on paper today. Wall Street is doing a bunch of really, really stupid things. They build very fragile systems. They build systems with a lot of people who are intermediaries. These people demand trust. Every 5 years to 10 years, they engineer a giant collapse of some kind or another. The amount of regulatory oversight is insane, and yet it serves mostly to protect the incumbents and not to open up the playing field to other new startups. That's where we are today. So I see a great opportunity for the very first system that can come in and say, I'm going to capture the digitization of assets that are on people's books, but are not globally tradable via blockchains. And that's exactly the direction that AVA is headed. So are there a lot of regulation in this space? Crap ton. There's going to be a lot of regulators coming in, as well they should. And we know like crazy stories like that we had a guy fake his death or pretend to fake his death, or nobody knows what happened. Only in crypto land do I find myself writing an email saying, did you go to the funeral? How distraught was his mother? It's a legit question. It's essentially a space overrun by people who don't know what they're doing, coupled with a bunch of get-rich-quick schemers, and sorely missing adults in the room who know how finance works, who know how distributed systems work, and who can bring the two together to build a system that can capture the great majority of the wealth out there.
No, I think that's a good point. I think we're seeing that with a lot of the recent activities that have happened in this space as well, right? So we've had continuous, not just platform breaks, which we've had in many cycles, right? From web to mobile to now this world of decentralization. We've been there, done that. But now we're seeing these massive hacks of not data, but cash, and not just a few dollars, millions of dollars that is just taken away in fractions of a second and gone. We're going to come back to that. I have a quick question that just came in from the audience. So a shout out to YT out there. What are your takes on the Telegram open network? So TON, we were just kind of talking about this, but do you think that the access to the huge user base combined with its kind of, standout-ish or rebel, public image will help set it apart or for success? Or do you think it will kind of be looped in with everybody else in the same kind of crypto space and industry?
I hope everybody realizes that the rebel scene or the rebel image is just an act, right? Mm-hmm. So I've been around, and I think I'm old enough and jaded enough to be able to look at these kinds of posturing and say, mm-hmm. Look, that's just posture. Like, they're working really hard to distance themselves from their Russian roots. I'd be shocked if the FAS hadn't fully infiltrated them, or if they weren't in bed with the FAS in the first place. Mm-hmm. So FAS is the new KGB. So I don't know. Like, that's my immediate reaction. Mm-hmm. So Rebel and Telegram, look, they're a ginormous corporation. They raised $1.7 billion. They don't talk to me about rebels. That's not where I go for rebels. If I wanted to go meet rebels, I know exactly where to go, and I know exactly who I would talk to. And I do this all the time. Not all the time. I do this fairly frequently, actually. The underground hacker scene is quite fun and quite interesting. Mm-hmm. And those are the true rebels, the true innovators. So Telegram ain't it. That's a giant mm-hmm. corporation taking your money. And they took your money, or people's money, and failed to deliver. Now, I'm no lawyer, so I'm not going to opine on whether that was a security or not a security. Will it ever launch? What will happen? I don't know those things. Clearly, there's a regulatory challenge. Clearly, they screwed up. And clearly, there's going to be some ramifications. They might be unable to launch in the US, and I don't know what's going to happen after that. But deep down, I don't know the Howey test. I'm not an expert in the application of the Howey test for securities. I think a lot of your listeners might not be in the US. They might be on the other side of the pond. They might be in Asia, where the Howey test doesn't even apply. So I don't care about that stuff. But deep down, if you take someone's money, and if you don't, in a timely fashion, deliver something, then that's a different kind of contract. If I take your money now to ship you something, let's say this water bottle, mm-hmm. and I don't ship it to you today, it's like, I took your money. I'm going to construct this out of recycled plastic. I'll fill it up with the water and then put gas in it and whatnot. That's craziness. That's a different kind of contract. You want to call it maybe a security or whatnot, I don't know. But I think that's really very different. And the fact that Telegram found an opening whereby they could raise 1.7 B, I don't know.
A lot of money.
It's a lot of money. It speaks to the zeitgeist. A lot of people will be harmed, and it will just bring undue attention to our area. The very first set of people who jump into these scenes are never the people with technology. Technology takes time to develop. Ask me how I know. I spent my life doing it. And so building AVA, for example, it takes time. And putting out a protocol like Avalanche with proofs in it is difficult. So you can't just copy paste from somebody else's white paper. The very first set of people who go out, they're the ones who copy pasted their white paper. And I'm not referring to Tron here, although I could be, but there are many others as well. So this is all well understood in these circles, that the very first wave is full of hucksters. So it's too bad. And it just invites regulatory attention. But, in the long term, these people never persevere. They are not the kinds who could have persevered in the first place. Right? They're not selected for it. They're the ones who make a splash. They make noise. They get into polemics. They get into fights. Stuff happens. Dramas per second is enormously high. And then they fizzle out. They fizzle out either by getting rich or by going to prison. And sometimes both. So that's what we're going to see with the first wave of coins. Most of them are completely worthless. And the true innovation is coming. So AVA is doing things completely differently, both at the technological side and also on the model side, on the network model. It's bringing in a lot of fresh ideas. And it's going to change the way DeFi works and looks for all. And then we're not going to look back. Once you use one of these systems, you can't go back.
Well, let's dive into what AVA is. I mean, having kept an eye on you guys for some time, there's a lot of pieces to this beautiful puzzle that's coming together. You also just had some major announcements of new launches. So with that, what is AVA Labs, and let's dive into how it's going to play a role into blockchain as an infrastructure, DeFi, dApps. Tell us what is it?
Sure. Okay. So AVA has three big things that it brings to the blockchain scene. Mm-hmm. One is a new consensus protocol. And it's not there. You could come up with a new consensus protocol by taking something old and putting a little tweak on top of it, which is what we see everybody else doing. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's trivial to do. Any one of my graduate students could do it in one day, one afternoon. If they couldn't, I would fire them. So this is trivial. Most people who are capable of doing it don't do it. That's why you have amateurs. You have an AI researcher pretending to be a blockchain researcher right now. You've got, I'm not going to name names again, but you've got a bunch of these people. It's because they're small, and I don't want to elevate them by naming their names. Right. So people are now pushing a whole bunch of narratives on the public saying, I have a new protocol. Well, okay. You don't. Okay, all of those protocols are based on the basic stuff that was worked out in the 80s by my colleagues. Mm-hmm. Avalanche is different. It works differently. It sends less messages. It uses a completely different mechanism of action to achieve unanimity in decisions, which is this consensus, the elusive property where everybody in the network picks the same choice when there's a choice to be made. So that new process, that mechanism of action is so efficient that we can make decisions in under a second. On the testnet today, a decision takes about 100 milliseconds. I double dare anybody to beat that. Well, I mean, you
heard it here first. Heard it here first. Double dare has been thrown out.
Double dare has been thrown out. Now you can beat it. You can beat it easily if you run your blockchain on, let's say, my laptop. Right? I can do that. That's no problem. Without compromising decentralization. So everybody and his brother comes up with something that's got a small number of players in it. And then they're like, oh, yeah, look at me. Well, I'm not going to look at you because you failed the central, there's a coin, for example, with a centralized coordinator. Mm-hmm. Right? So there's a centralized entity in it. And it's got everything bad going for it. Why do you have a centralized entity? It's not a blockchain if you got the centralized thing. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so what is the very first distinguishing feature of AVA? It's very, very low latency. Mm-hmm. It's so low that you can interact with it in real time, and you don't even realize that you're interacting with a giant blockchain in the background. It's very high throughput. We have achieved numbers as high as 19,000 transactions per second. And I remember the Bitcoin core developers looking at me. I was like, guys, why aren't you compromising? They're saying, look, you'll never be able to beat Visa. So why even try? We have to go to layer 2. We'll never be able to do this. And I agree with them. They will never be able to do that. They and their technology is not capable of reaching those levels. That's why they have to go to layer 2. They were right. Mm-hmm. But this technology is fundamentally different, and it achieves these enormous numbers without blinking an eyelid. And then the third number it achieves, which is really huge, is it's inclusive. I had mentioned this before. You and I and everybody could actually participate as block producers in this system. Mm-hmm. We have a say. We are participants. We're not, and there's no sub-selection. It's not like, oh, I have a say every 10 days or whatnot. It's like, no, you're part of the network. You get a say on everything, that you are consulted on everything, on every decision. So that's number one. It's a much faster, much better engine. And you got to see it to believe it. So, I see people who love ETH2. I love Ethereum, but I have grave misgivings about Ethereum 2.0. And people who love Ethereum, they tell me that it's going to have this, that, and the other. They don't realize that even if Ethereum 2.0 were to work, even if it succeeds, its latencies are going to be enormously long, 5 to 7 seconds. You can't interact with a service that long. That takes that long to respond to you. You can't build a DEX on top of it. You can't build anything exciting on top of it. So anyways, it's a much better engine, number one. Number two, we have a very different network model. Every single one of our competitors, every single one, all of those 2,000 coins, I mean, they're not even competitors. Every single existing coin copied their network model from Satoshi. They had zero creativity that they brought into the system. And what's that network model? You have a coin, you have a virtual machine, just one, and you have a network that implements the virtual machine, which then carries around the coin. And then you sell the coin, you get rich a little bit, and then you've got your army shills your coin, and then you've got the crypto shilling thing going for you, and that's what you've got. AVA is fundamentally different. Instead, what we have is a vision where we have one coin AVA, but on top of it, there are many, 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 many other coins on top. Each and every one of these coins can come with its own virtual machine. Do you want to use EVM? We could do that. Do you want to use WASM? We could do that. You want to use something else? You want to use the AVA virtual machine, which is very bare bones, very secure, very small? Sure, we can do that. Any number of virtual machines in the middle. And most importantly, you can say, I would like to deploy my coin on this virtual machine or using this virtual machine on this network. What kind of network? A purple network. Now and then suddenly you've opened up a conversation. What does it take to be purple? You can express things about your network that you cannot express in a smart contract, in code. What are those things? You can express resource requirements. I want, to be purple, you got to have more RAM. And now my block size is going to be a lot bigger than the default block size because the nodes in my network are bigger than the nodes on average out there. Mm-hmm. So you can create these striated networks, these layered networks of selected hosts that have special features. What's another special feature? You can say my validators promise to keep things private. Data on my blockchain will have integrity, will execute correctly, but the data will not be made public. You can say this. Mm-hmm. Number 3, you can say things like archival requirements. I'm building a real estate coin. When we store something, I want this stored on archival grade backups for the next 50 years to come. It's a real estate record. Mm-hmm. So that we can do. And then 4th and final one, and this is the big one, you can say things like, to be purple, you have to be in the US, or you have to be in the EU, or you have to be wherever the heck else, or you have to have signed an agreement that I made up. Suddenly you have a legal basis for the service you're offering. Take any company, take take a big IoT company, take one of these Korean companies, take Siemens, and imagine, and we've had many conversations with them, imagine that they want to build an IoT device that is powered by a blockchain. Would they use a public network? Not in a billion years. They can't control what's happening on that network. They don't control the nodes themselves, and they don't have a level of service guarantee. They don't know what to expect. And if tomorrow you've got CryptoKitties, then suddenly the performance characteristics change. And you could lose nodes, and you don't know what to count on. And if they ask legal, what's legal going to say? Well, who's backing our service? And what agreement do we have with them? Absolutely none is the answer for every other blockchain except AVA. On AVA, it's possible for validators to bring in, again, this level of service that actually matches the needs of the people issuing digital assets on top. When we talk to people on Wall Street, this is the number one requirement. They say, look, you are not the first person to suggest that we digitize this stuff. And I say, I know. And they say, we already did a proof of concept. And I say, did you do it with R3? They say, yeah, we did. And I'm like, yeah, did you deploy it? They're like, nope, we did not deploy it. Every Fortune 500 company has done a proof of concept of a permissioned blockchain. Mm-hmm. Not a single one of them, except for one, not a single one has been deployed in a mission critical setting. That one, by the way, was the Whopper coin. Burger King rolled out, if people remember this, maybe 2.5 years ago, rolled out Whopper coin. And that's powered by Bitcoin NG, which runs on Waves. And so that's my protocol powering Waves that actually is behind the one and only application that I know that was actually deployed out there. So, but I digress. Going back, other than that one, every single Fortune 500 CTO or CIO that experimented with blockchain walked away in disgust. They said, this is cool, this is cute. They never badmouth us. They never say anything bad. They always say, this is really cool tech. Mm-hmm. I just don't understand how I can use it for my use case. I need to have control over the full life cycle of my asset. And so by controlling the validator set, you get that control. By controlling the virtual machine plus the network, you control the full life cycle of all the digital assets you issue. So that's unique to us, and I'm really proud of this. It sounds like a simple idea now that I describe it to you. It takes a little while to describe, but run it by legal if you have a legal department, and they will be like, yeah, we want that. It's like that. That's the thing we want. Because now the legal grounding is there. I go down to the bottommost layer. There is an agreement.
So good.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh no. So I just had a question come in. We've got a ton rolling in, which is awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Keep them coming. We'll get to them as they come. So Sam out there sent a question in. Says, compared to Bitcoin, Ethereum Tendermint, AVA is much faster and more secure. But can you tell us which main technologies are used by AVA in its project?
Sure. It uses the Avalanche Consensus Protocol. Mm-hmm. It uses its own super streamlined virtual machine. Mm-hmm. It uses a directed acyclic graph for achieving concurrency in its decisions. So whereas most other blockchains make decisions one by one by one by one, AVA can make them in parallel all at once. And if you have unrelated things like CryptoKitties in one corner of your universe and an ICO going on in another universe, these two things need not be sequenced with respect to each other. Mm-hmm. So your ICO buy order doesn't have to get queued up behind the CryptoKitty operation. So that's that. We have pluggable modules and we have multiple virtual machines. The EVM in its entirety is a pluggable module for AVA. Mm-hmm. So AVA runs the entirety of the Ethereum virtual machine. Every contract that runs on Ethereum also runs on AVA, except it's much faster. Mm-hmm. It's not sharded. I don't believe in sharding, at least not the dumb way that a lot of PhD students in their first few months, they love this dumb idea of, let me just split everybody the way, a high school splits students by their last name. Well, if you do that, you're not going to end up with your best friend, okay? And so, and also let me tell you, with last name S, there's going to be a bucket with a shit ton of people in it, all starting with the last name S. And if you allow people to pick their last names, everybody's going to pick a last name that starts with S because that's where the cool kids are. And then my bucket is even bigger, and that's even worse. Then I now have to wait behind a huge line while the bucket for G is pretty much empty, right? So that's exactly what's going to happen with shard. Anyway, look, I'm getting a little ranty and a little digressive today.
It's okay. I got a bunch of questions to fire at you. So
undoubtedly, I didn't even get to tell people the third big thing about AVA, but
what's the third? What is the third?
We'll get back to it.
All right. We're going to come back to it.
Let me finish this question. So
yeah,
the big idea here was, what are the big technologies? I said the protocol, the consensus protocol, the DAG. I said the pluggable virtual machines, the ability to put more than one virtual machine. We are working on we have the EVM in its entirety. We support everything in a byte-by-byte compatible fashion. We are working on adding WASM support as well as many other virtual machines. Mm-hmm. And we have governance, on-chain governance. So that is my third, and now I'm going to tie the two things together. The third tier is the fact that every other chain bakes into code a bunch of things that it doesn't want to control. So Bitcoin, for example, fixed the emissions curve for all time, and he got it mostly right. And but he didn't always get it right. Sometimes he overmints, and you end up creating many more coins and giving much more money to miners than you get in return for security. Now, Kyle, did I drop off there?
You did for just a second, but we're back. So you're good.
So people might disagree with me on this because Bitcoin has done well, but look at Zcash. It copied Bitcoin's curve, and they are certainly overminting for the security that they get. ETH1, the current Ethereum, is also overminting. They're minting a lot of tokens, and they're not getting enough in security, in my opinion. So these things are fixed for all time. In AVA, they are under the control of the coin holders. There's a hard cap of coins that cannot change, but the way you approximate the cap do we go towards it faster or slower? That's under the control of the coin holders. Mm-hmm. So those are the three big technological pillars underneath AVA, and we have great things coming on top. One of the most exciting things coming on top is a DEX that the world hasn't seen before. It's much faster, better than other DEXs out there. So we've got some really cool DeFi things going, and it's the ideal platform for issuing assets and trading them, as well as discovering them.
And also for decentralized apps, right? So mm-hmm. dApps, building dApps. I mean, you've pretty much spelled that out, the benefits. Do you see any? One of the questions we had was serious businesses, being launched on as dApps this year in 2020. The way I would kind of reframe that question is, dApps in their entirety for the past year and a half, there's been a lot of tests, very heavy on gaming. Now we're seeing finance becoming decentralized finance and a few other areas. Do you see dApps really starting to take off here in 2020 with some serious applications, some big companies behind them? Or are we still just going to be testing this industry out? Are users still going to be dabbling here and there? Where do you see things going with dApps overall, but even more so, launching on AVA?
I absolutely see an enormous future for this area. Mm-hmm. So let's be clear. If you look at the numbers, the amount of money in DeFi, if you look at it, there was a big run up about a year and a half ago, but for the last year, the increase has slowed down tremendously. Mm-hmm. And the dynamics for this are not that, I'm going to say this and people will dislike me, but this is, I think, what's happening. The reason why people fled to or went into DeFi is because they had tokens in their hands that they did not want to cash out and they wanted passive income from. Mm-hmm. They had bought in at a high point in ETH's life and they were underwater, and who didn't, right? Yeah, I did too. So so they went in high and they didn't want to convert their coins to cash. And so they want to sit it out. They believe in the long-term future of Ethereum, and I certainly believe in the long-term future of both smart contracts for sure, also as well Ethereum. I consider myself a part of the Ethereum community. That's a crowd that I happen to love very much, and it's a system I would like to see flourish going forward. Now, but so that was the initial run-up. There was a very initial, very, very enormous interest about a year and a half ago, mostly from these people who had coins that they didn't know what to do with, and this was a good place to park those coins. It has slowed down. We are not seeing more people come in. The rate at which more people are coming into DeFi has slowed down tremendously. At the same time, weird, quirky things are now beginning to surface. These Legos are really cool, and every now and then you step on one. And the most recent one, well, there's the reentrancy one that's, of course, always around. The DAO got screwed over by that, but it came up again, maybe it was 7 days ago. But also, flash loans came up recently. So you're getting into weird corner cases that were unanticipated. And in my view, Ethereum is going to be a fantastic system for experimenting with these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. It exists right now. People can go out there and experiment with value-bearing coins on Ethereum. AVA is not at mainnet yet. We're going to get there in around June is what I'm hoping. Early July is the public deadline, so we're trying to get all of our ducks in a row for the early July deadline. And so let's see. But the proper way to do this is to find stable platforms, not for experimentation, but actually for issuing stable, trustworthy contracts, actual dApps that people can use, that are not going to be hacked, that are not going to be abused by anybody with 15 minutes of spare time and willingness to read Solidity code. So I think the world
and easeability.
Amazing, by the way. So, sorry, Kyle, let me just finish the thought. Yeah. I spend a lot of time on Wall Street. I talk to these folks. These traditional finance people are not all clunky people in three-piece suits, whatever, with a monocle or whatnot. They know about smart contracts. Many of them trade this stuff actively, and they're willing and looking for ways to get in. They just don't have the right platforms. So Yes, with every cell of my body, I believe that this is going to be an enormous area.
Mhm.
No matter what we do, it's going to be enormous. But especially this coming year with actual proper platforms that can handle their needs.
Well, and I was just going to add on to that. I think you're right, but also interface. I mean, not that these applications have to be beautiful to the max, but there needs to be something aside from a terminal type screen where people can feel a little bit smoother of the interaction. People can get familiar with it. It's an easeability piece that is it's a big hurdle we're trying to build through, which to your point, I see as something we can start to overcome this year, but it's still a hurdle nonetheless and kind of holding us back.
Absolutely. So on that front, there are a bunch of cool ideas that I have never mentioned anywhere, and I won't until mainnet, AVA mainnet event.
Okay.
And they pertain to the user interface, the user experience. The user experience is abysmal. Everybody knows this. Install MetaMask. What the hell is that? You lost 80% of your user base. And okay, you click the button, you gotta wait 15 seconds for Ethereum to give you one confirmation, which, by the way, everybody assumes is safe. It's not safe. What the heck? Somebody's going to lose a lot of money to that as well.
Right.
But anyway, so 15-second interactive times. Talk to anybody who's done user interface design. They'll tell you if you have to wait more than 200 milliseconds, you lost that person.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I see the same thing spin for a second, I go back out of there.
Right. I'm the same way. So follow up on that. We had a great question from the audience come in around building dApps and being a developer with AVA. If a developer today has a deep knowledge of Solidity, pardon me, is it easy for them to get on board and start developing with AVA, or is there any kind of flexibility, compatibility issues from the code structure from Solidity to what they can develop on AVA?
It's trivial. So everything they write for Ethereum works exactly the same. You can take the binary and drop it onto AVA if you so chose. The binary. And so all of the work that anybody put into learning Solidity carries over immediately. So AVA has multiple sub-networks. There is the main network, the X network, where assets live. And there's a contract chain, which we call the C network, where dApps live. So you would deploy your dApp on the C chain, and you can then take assets from the X chain and send them to the C chain, and vice versa. So it's one seamless whole. It's everything you learned from Ethereum and Solidity carries over. At the same time, we are planning to support WASM. So people out there who like Rust, people out there who like C++, if you want to do your programming in C++, we can actually run your code if you build an appropriate smart contract. And so that is it's not public yet, but it's in the works. And we're thrilled about our flexibility. So both existing users of smart contracts and also people whose code can be compiled down to C and then down to WASM. Like if you're a Java programmer, write Java, we'll compile it down to C, we'll compile that down to WASM, and we can deploy that if you so chose. So
so to your point, the flexibility is there, which is great for the future of where this thing goes. I mean, in your recent launch, AVA announced as the Internet of blockchains, which just to continue to further this point of how flexible, integratable, and scalable AVA is based on all the tools and the features that you guys offer today. And speaking of that, as we look and transition back to DeFi, a question we had is, can AVA handle DeFi? And I think we've answered that, but if you want to expand on it, but also stablecoins, can AVA handle where DeFi is going and scaling, working with stablecoins like EOSDT, like Tether, like USDC, all of these stablecoins that are rising, and actually be a competitor in the space? And then how are you handling or thinking about hacks and attacks within the industry as well? So
great question. Let's handle this one by one. So can AVA handle DeFi? AVA is designed from the ground up for finance. So our use case is finance. We're in New York for a reason. And so we're squarely targeting financial applications, high value applications. And we have all of the technological necessities there to support that. And that means that, gaming is child's play compared to what finance requires. Of course, it just falls out. We don't have to work extra hard for that. Now, at least gaming at the speeds that other people are doing blockchains at, we could do that in our sleep and move on. And in fact, they would even be performance partitioned from the rest of the network. You'd create a gaming subnet, put in a bunch of fast hosts on it, and start running it super fast. It would impose no load on the rest of the network. And so AVA has that going for it. We don't have to be one of these coins. There's a billion of them. You can go to San Francisco, collect a bunch of the riffraff devs that don't have a job or are being tossed out of a big company or whatnot, and then tomorrow they will build you a terrible set of code. I've looked at that particular code. People know what I'm talking about, and you look at it, it's kind of crap because like that. What did you expect? And then they go after a gaming market. These super specialized things, that's kind of like your friend who's really into cars, or like your friend you don't want that kind of a friend. You want like a normal guy or a normal gal who kind of can function normally in society. We don't have enough of those. So this over-specialized blockchains, they're weird to me. I would never put my money into something that's carrying a badge that says I am X for Y. That's just not a good look in my good technology. It'd kill the field across the board.
Right.
So we don't see ourselves as whatever X killer or Y killer. We're finance killers, and in turn, we're Wall Street and traditional finance killers. Now, okay. So what was the question? So how about stable coins?
Yep.
Stable coins are fantastic. I think I'm the first academic to write a stable coin taxonomy paper. The very first paper on stable coins is from my group. It's the first peer-reviewed coin. A peer-reviewed paper, sorry, not coin. And people are most welcome to take a look. We try to mention every single work out there that we know of and create a taxonomy around them so people can compare these stable coins to each other. I love them. Stable coins are fantastic. EOSDT is fantastic. Tether is actually now, it has been through fire. It's been through trial by fire. It survived it. I had grave concerns. I still have them, but it's unkillable. Like it's like that, that insect where you try to sort of go after it with raid and it won't die. So if it won't die, at some point you gotta go, that thing is pretty darn resilient. I kind of want to buddy up to it, right? So I wouldn't mind betting on it because I couldn't kill it. You say nobody could kill it. So let's see. So Tether, I digress. What did we say? USDC, whatever, like all these coins through USD. And I love, absolutely adore stable coins and other currencies. So at AVA Labs, we invested in a Turkish lira stable coin. That went kind of meteoric for a while because of a bunch of reasons involving currency arbitrage within Turkey. And so we're drawing people into the ecosystem through these mechanisms. These are going to be accessible on AVA. Both directly, you can implement them. You can take MakerDAO, deploy it on the C chain if you wanted to. But we love the Maker team, and we spoke to them. We're not going to be doing that. Instead, we're going to bridge DAI from Ethereum to AVA, and that's the best for both Ethereum and AVA, and it's also best for the MakerDAO team. What else are we planning to do? Yeah, there's a lot to be done on the stablecoin front, and I think the more the merrier on the technical side as far as stablecoins go. I want to support all of them.
And then what about the hacks and attacks? That was the third part of the question. So we just went through this, 2-3 days ago. 25 million in, 25 million out, and then 25 million back in. Very, very sweet, very kind. But it just goes to show, you mentioned flash loans. We've talked about this scenario. There's more to come. There's more that have happened. You've experienced this in the past as well with other projects. How is AVA set up, and where do we go from here in terms of these attacks? Is this more learning, or is regulation going to get tight? Are users going to push back and say, whoa, show me the audit, show me what's going on before I jump in?
I wish. So okay, so let me be upfront. AVA is amazing technology. It's got a lot of things going into it. Most other people, they have one tweak, one boring thing, and we've got so many creative things that I'm having difficulty getting it all off my chest, right? But we don't solve everything. We're not a panacea for everything on Earth. I cannot magically make other people's dApps correct. That's not something I or any platform can do. So, speaking personally for myself, not as AVA, not on behalf of, I can't talk on behalf of AVA. It's going to evolve whatever way it evolves. But as for me, as a professor, I spent the last 3 years or so, 3.5 years, following the DAO hack, going around and begging, pleading, and enticing, mostly enticing, my colleagues who work on program verification to come into this space. I have been moderately successful. So I've been able to pull in various different groups by tales that are somewhat interesting, somewhat lucrative, somewhat, I know what to tell to an academic to get their interest. And typically it goes, I understand your technology. Here is the gap for it. Here is where you fall in, and you shall have great impact. And so by doing this, I managed to bring in people, and I'm proud of what I did there. And so we are today now beginning to see audits done with automated tools, at least partially automated audits. So that is going to take us to a different place. At the same time, the virtual machines we use have to be better. The EVM is designed okay, but it's not what I would build on or what I would build if I wanted to build something that could provide a security guarantee up the stack. The approach taken by Tezos, for example, is a lot better, because Tezos is trying to provide semantics for the underlying system, and now you can use automated reasoning about the correctness of the resulting dApps. So what will AVA do? Well, AVA has the nicety that you could put any VM on top. So, and in particular, if you were to use, say, the WASM VM, and you write your code in Rust, which is a functional programming language, there are already an enormous amount of auditing tools out there for Rust and for the functional programming world. Mm-hmm. So we are trying to do things at AVA to facilitate what needs to happen, which is really, really sort of heavy cannons being brought in to attack this problem. And the heavy cannon is called program verification, and model checking is one aspect of it. And maybe program synthesis. Maybe, in the real future, like, 10 years out, we should be thinking about not writing code for a smart contract, but writing the spec and generating the code from that spec. So these are all well understood things in the program verification community. They have a history of 40 plus years of doing exactly this. And we need to be there as the blockchain community. And I'm hoping that AVA is going to be there, mostly because we know what we want. And for most other people, this is like, for most other projects who just picked up this material because they see it as a way to get rich quick, they don't know how to even attract or even talk to the right people or what language to use.
So we've got a lightning round, about 3 or 4 quick questions with quick responses before we wrap up here. Great question came. We didn't get a chance to touch on it earlier, but you have a part of AVA called AVAX.
Oh, yeah.
Which talks very heavily around education as I was looking into it. Question that was brought up around AVAX is, can you explain it in easy words, but just what is AVAX so everyone can understand what the benefit is that you guys have created here?
Oh, okay. AVAX is an initiative. That's all it is. We have a pot of money and a bunch of people who want to see good work done. It's like Google X. Google has an arm called Google X, and they take on crazy out there kind of ideas. They fund them, they incubate them, they work with them, and they try to see them to fruition. Self-driving cars was a Google X project. AVAX is a similar thing. If you have a blockchain idea, and it doesn't matter if it's far out. In fact, the farther out, the better. It doesn't matter if it involves, exciting but complex tech. We love that. That's great. Then apply to the AVAX program. We'll give you money, and we'll give you support of whatever kind you might need. And we would love to see the resulting thing deployed on AVA.
Sounds like a great opportunity to jump into. All right. You just did an article in Forbes about what's happening in the UK specifically and around Europe around central bank digital currencies or CBDCs. And China just came out and started talking about its digital yuan, named about 22 different corporations. So McDonald's, Starbucks, Subway, who are all going to be testing that. Two parts. What is going on with CBDCs? What are your thoughts around this, and how, we've seen stablecoins start to rise. Now CBDCs are going to be playing a role in our lives. And then secondly, since China just made these announcements, the blockchain network just came online. Do you think they're going to be the first or one of the biggest adoptions that we're going to see out there?
So what we're seeing there is very, very simple. China made its announcement that they are looking into blockchains and central bank issued currencies, digital currencies. And that's what CBDC is about, central bank digital currencies. And as soon as any other central banker anywhere in the world heard that, they all said, okay, got it. We have to be out there. We cannot possibly have a technological gap between China and ourselves when it comes to these digital currencies. So there will be a role for these digital currencies to play. What role is that? Well, it could be any role that fiat currently plays today. People might want to hold it. Well, why might you want to hold it? Well, if you're in a country like Argentina and you're facing economic depression because of the virus, or there are many other, Brazil, Turkey, etc. There are a lot of people I talk to who express concern about the future. So, or there are other money flows, again, cross-border money flows, a settlement system for settling certain kinds of trades. These are all possible with CBDCs. And whoever gets out there with the very first one will end up getting, having the first mover advantage. Now, as a result, we started seeing an enormous uptick from every central banker, starting with the ones that are most tech savvy, the UK, Bank of Japan, Bank of Canada, by the way, and even within the Fed system, we suddenly saw a very, very quick sort of scramble once the China news came out. So we're talking to some of these entities, and I hope that they will build their coins on a sound foundation technologically. And overall, this can only make the world better, in the sense that suddenly these cross-border money flows will be much easier to send, and it will open up the playing field to larger numbers of non-institutional players. Now, knowing central banks, we will see exactly how it pans out. It's not in their DNA to open things up. It's not in their DNA to embrace open source, open systems, open networks. So I think we're going to see some missteps. We already saw one. We saw the Petro. That was a flop. That was absolutely horrible. And we're going to see other missteps, but somebody will get it right. And oh boy, will they get it right. So they get that enormous, I think the estimate is about 2% of GDP, US GDP, comes from the fact that the dollar is used to settle trades. That's an enormous boost. 2% of GDP is actually
a big deal.
For it, we're going to see negative growth this year. So 2% is a nice 2% to have. So it's a really exciting field. We have the technology for it, for enforcing whatever restrictions one might want to enforce. And these banks, I hope, do not fall into the trap of building a technologically centralized system that has just the API, just keys, but not the openness of a blockchain. So that is a critical distinguishing feature. I think the blockchain crowd understood exactly what I'm talking about, and the central bankers did not. They're blinking right now, trying to figure out what the heck did he just say. But by the time they figure it out, I think they will know exactly what I mean.
I love it. So last question, where can everybody find you? Where can they find AVA? How can they get started? Just give us a clue where everyone can go.
Sure. So go to avalabs.org and just look around. There is the testnet that's out. I think it's been out for 3 weeks now. There is a bug bounty on the testnet. We put some known bugs in there, so we know that there are some. And people found a few of them, but there are still some more to find. And if we find them, we'll pay you a handsome sum. So to play around with the testnet, we have a wallet. Sign up for our Telegram channel. That's where a lot of the announcements go on and the discussion goes on. If you're a developer, come to our Discord channel. That's where all the devs hang out, and that's where we all talk shop. So if you want to see my rants online, on Twitter, I am Elite Haxor, EL33TH4XOR. So come and check me out there if you want. I think so deep down, yes, we've seen a lot of scams. We've seen a lot of crazy things. We're living through this virus times. It's really annoying. We're all kind of cooped up. But the virus times will end. So, by the way, so Avalanche works by using an epidemic algorithm. So I know a little bit about epidemic algorithms. They start slow, they speed up, and then suddenly they're over. And then you don't even understand when it's over. It takes a little while to figure out, are we really done? Yeah. So this thing is going to be over soon. There's a lot of kindling around the fire, or the dwindling fire where the economy is. And people keep putting on more and more kindling around this dying fire. And suddenly it'll catch fire. And I expect an enormous boost in prices, asset prices across the board, including crypto, especially crypto. So we're going to have a great summer. It's going to be a bonanza. And I can't wait. But in the longer term, which is where it matters, we're going to rethink Wall Street. We're going to restructure Wall Street. We will reimagine it from the ground up. They're doing really boneheaded things, and I apologize, but they will also agree with me that a lot of what they do, nuts and bolts, is just absolutely boneheaded. And we can make it far more efficient. We can take out incumbents from places where they add no value, and we can open the space up to startups that are actually bringing in creative new ideas. I'm so excited about the future. And so thank you very much for having me and having me rant for a little bit. And thank you to the audience as well for the incredibly insightful questions. This was awesome.
Emin, thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, we could talk for another 2 hours. This is absolutely wonderful. And I agree, we're going to have a great summer, hopefully much better weather than we're both experiencing on the opposite sides of the coast right now. But nonetheless, thank you so much. So to the audience, thank you as well for all of the great questions. There was some that came in a little later that we had already answered. So please do check out the recap, which will be live shortly. If we didn't get to your questions, send them into the Equilibrium Telegram or the AVA Labs Telegram chat, and we'll make sure between the two of us, we help get those answered for you. We'll also make sure that the links that Emin mentioned are in the show notes afterwards. So you don't have to worry about memorizing his Twitter handle. It will be available for you to click. And also, again, thank you so much for joining. We'll be back here in 2 weeks with our next guest, and we're super excited to have you join us. We're going to check in with Emin offline here for just a moment to figure out the best question. We'll drop it in the Telegram chat for you. And everyone, we're Equilibrium, IO, and thank you very much.